To the Point with Michael Williams.
Good morning. It's an open congressional seat because longtime Democratic Congressman Ted Deutsch decided not to run again. The new Congressional District 23 covering much of South Palm Beach County and North Broward. Democrat Jared Moskowitz and Republican Joe Budd facing off in November. My guest today is Joe Budd. His opponent will be here next week. Sir, we appreciate you joining us.
Michael, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Who is Joe Budd? Your background, life, family, work?
I moved here to Boca Raton, Florida in 1993. I started a new career as a financial advisor. I've been very successful at that, accumulated about $100 million under management. I think that says people trust me. Been married for 37 years, 3 children, 1 grandson, and many foster children, grandchildren at any given time.
By your acknowledgement, too, in your own campaign website, you acknowledged it wasn't always easy. You had some tough times financially early on and sort of up by the bootstrap story, as you described it.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, 2 years right before moving to Florida, I had a financial failure and spent 2 years on welfare. I could have been taking the easy route out, signed my name on a piece of paper, a bankruptcy form, and been $600,000 out of debt. Instead, I wrote letters to all my creditors, and I made promises to pay back, and I settled every one of those debts without having to file bankruptcy.
Mr. Budd, a lot of people in Florida right now can relate to the tough times because they're going through them themselves, and most particularly as we look at Hurricane Ian. If you were to be elected to Congress, what at the federal level can we do to help Hurricane Ian victims, number one, and on the broader sense, what at the federal level for the property insurance crisis? Largely a state issue, but there is federal remedy that's available there.
Right.
How do you see that?
Well, first of all, anytime we have a catastrophe like Hurricane Ian, whether it was Hurricane Sandy up in New Jersey, whatever those might be, the federal government comes in, they help, they provide aid to get people back on their feet, low income, low interest rate type loans for businesses and things like that. As far as a fund nationally, certainly the Florida insurance market was already hurting before Hurricane Ian, and we need to form some type of equivalents to like national flood insurance, where maybe we pull in Tornado Alley, maybe we pull in windstorm areas, earthquake areas, flooding areas, and combine those all into one type of catastrophic type insurance that can run similar to the flood insurance program.
Is that a commitment of yours that if you're elected that'll be a key focus? Because as we all know, the headlines are there and the hurt, but it tends to drift away and we all move on to the next thing.
Right.
You got the Ian aftermath's going to go on for a long time, and the larger property insurance crisis that all Floridians are feeling. Again, largely a state issue, but not exclusively so.
Well, there's a component in here of a lobbyist nature, okay? Go back to Hurricane Sandy. My opponent was involved in that, acted as a lobbyist, earning millions of dollars on Hurricane Sandy. What happened, if you look at a deposition that occurred in March of 2013 in New Jersey, the company was accused of overbilling. In the beginning of that deposition, there was a company that came in that was going to charge $8.49 a cubic yard to hold the debris away. The company that won the bid charged $21.25 a cubic yard. It's 2.5 times. That's $60 million. That was a $100 million contract. That's $60 million of lobbyist money built in there.
We will give Mr. Moskowitz due chance to respond to your critique and criticism next week, and I do want to emphasize that. Speaking of your opponent, I'd asked his campaign, they said we will not debate, and they said the reason they would not, it later bubbled up in a Sun Sentinel headline, is a South Florida congressional nominee, a QAnon-supporting election denier who thinks Trump won in 2020. Mr. Moskowitz, when asked why he wouldn't debate, essentially said that for those concerns and reasons, he would not debate you. He said he was not interested in debating you on those terms, that you, as he alleged, election denier who believes in this satanic cult conspiracy about QAnon. Right. Do you agree that the 2020 election was won by Joe Biden?
It was won by Joe Biden. I won't use the word stolen. We have election integrity laws here in Florida. If those election integrity laws here in Florida were the same laws throughout the rest of the United States, which are good laws, I believe Donald Trump would have won the election, but because of different states have different laws, he lost the election.
But you do not think it was stolen?
No, but I think at the end of the day, which happens over and over and over again, the Democrats outsmarted the Republicans.
And what about this QAnon allegation?
Well, that's just crazy talk. That's hogwash. I don't believe in any conspiracy theories or anything like that.
What about the fact that, and we'll ask him why when I have him next week, he said he won't debate you. What about that? Your response?
Well, he should debate. The people should have the opportunity to hear both of us speak our ideas, compare those ideas. But the real reasons why he won't debate me is one of the things that I just already brought up to you, that he's made millions of dollars on hurricanes acting as a lobbyist. And he's an anti-police instinct person, which is typical.
That's a tough charge. Democrats always argue, wait a minute, to say we're anti-police is going too far.
Well, this is reality. This is in his own district. In October of 2018, there was a video that went viral of a Coral Springs police officer arresting a 14-year-old outside the Coral Springs Mall. His first instinct was to send out a tweet: excessive force, police brutality.
But that doesn't mean you're anti-police.
Well, if that's your first instinct without getting the full message, I would say that would be your anti-police. And remember, this was the same Coral Springs Police Department that just 8 months before that stormed through the perimeter set up by the Broward Sheriff's Office to rescue those children in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. He should have been praising that police department rather than attacking it.
But again, don't we in all our politics, whether Republican candidates or Democrats, tend to take one moment in time, one comment, and suddenly on both sides of the aisle blow that up into something that it may not be? Because I'm quite certain he's going to sit here next week and say, I am not anti-police.
Well, listen, we as elected officials need to take the time to make sure we thoroughly look at something and know what actually happened before we make an opinion on it.
Let's come back to your campaign. What other hot button issues, if you're elected to Congress, will be your priority?
Well, number one priority is fixing this economy.
But how do you do it specifically?
Well, I think one of the number one things that we can do is turn around the Biden administration's elimination and foot on the neck of the fossil fuel industry. Energy independence is the number one thing. And just think about all the things. There's 6,000 products, makeup, our clothing that we're wearing, that come from oil. 6,000 products. You look at the travel industry, you look at the shipping industry, all that is oil. And that is the number one thing that's causing the big inflation problem that we have today. So we need to go back to being energy independent. As a matter of fact, we have the world's largest oil and gas reserves. We could be energy dominant. Look at one of the side effects.
Do you, speaking of, well, go ahead.
Look at one of the side effects, I mean, with the war in Ukraine. Putin couldn't afford that war if $30 a barrel was the price of oil.
Do you acknowledge that climate change is real?
Climate change is real. It changes all the time. I believe we have short, middle, and long-term cycles.
And I ask that because the Biden administration will argue, amid the criticism, and you're not the first to make it, the criticism you just made, but they'll argue we have to start going greener sooner than later.
Yeah, but that's a terrible argument, because basically what you're saying is Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, they can all drill oil in a more environmentally safe way than our own technology here in America. I say that's hogwash.
And your point is we're asking them to send us more oil.
Right. Well, we want to take sanctions off of Venezuela right now in order for us to be able to buy oil from. What are we going to do? We're going to reduce sanctions on Iran and Iraq as well?
Mr. Budd, a couple of other hot button issues we'd like to get to. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, it's not going anywhere. He acknowledged it. But he pushed for a nationwide ban on abortion at 15 weeks with few exceptions. If that was ever to come up while you're in Congress, what is your sense of that? What is your view on abortion? What's your sense on a nationwide ban?
I am personally pro-life. However, I've been endorsed by the Florida Family Action Council. I've been endorsed by the Christian Coalition. Before getting those endorsements, I let them both know I will not vote, sponsor anything on any federal legislation as it comes to abortion. I think the Supreme Court has made it clear it's a state issue. Anything that they approve on the federal basis is just going to be thrown back by the Supreme Court.
Parkland, it was something that all of us will deal with and cope with, most particularly the victims' families for the rest of their lives. And it engendered a huge debate about guns. Do you think we need to do more at the federal level to make sure the Parklands, the Uvaldes do not happen again? Republicans have said we don't want restrictions on guns. Where do we stand? Even Congressman Brian Mast, a Republican you could end up serving with, after Parkland said we need to look at a ban on assault-style weapons.
Well, what we did here in the state of Florida under Governor Rick Scott is they did change the law. They raised the age to 21.
You support that?
It's the law now. So yes.
I mean, had you had a vote?
I wouldn't vote, let's say, for more restrictions other than making sure we're always doing background checks and checking the mental capacity of people.
Red flag laws, you support those?
Well, no, not really. I would say that if somebody has a questionable history, I mean, let's just take the shooter and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas an example. There was a questionable history there. It was being hidden by the Promise program, and you know, that wasn't coming to light properly like it should have been. Right. If that would have been properly investigated, come to light, he's an individual that shouldn't have had a gun. Mr.
Budd, you're in a Democratic lean district, at least by the numbers.
Right.
Make your closing argument. You've introduced yourself to those who perhaps don't know you as well here on
Right.
To the Point. Make your closing argument. And when you go around that congressional district, what do you say to the potential lean Democrats or the potential lean independents about your case, your argument for being elected?
First, this isn't my first rodeo. This is my 8th run. I was the first guy who took on Ted Deutsch in a general election. And back then, the district was completely different. It didn't just lean Democrat, it was solid Democrat.
And some may argue it still is,
yeah,
but
well,
at least leans.
Well, the Cook Political Report then labeled it a D26, meaning the Democrats had a 26% advantage. That's not the same today.
So what's your closing argument?
All right, well, today it's only a 5% advantage in the Democrat. My closing argument is this is a pocketbook issue election. And the Republicans, as businessmen, I'm a businessman, I'm an accountant by education, are much better on the economy. People are voting their pocketbook. We have record high gas prices, record high medical costs, record high grocery bills, and at the end of the day, I am doing very well. We've knocked on 35,000 doors in lower middle income neighborhoods. They're looking for relief. This is a pocketbook election. The old adage, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? It's shortened. Are you better off today than you were 2 years ago?
And you talked about oil, but very briefly, some argue those issues are bigger than any one congressperson or one administration, that you can't wave a magic wand and make high grocery prices go away or inflation or affordable housing issues.
That's right. That stuff takes time. That's a change of policy that needs to occur, though.
All right. Joe Budd, thank you for the introduction to our audience. Congressional District 23, the Republican, and we will have your opponent on next week. But we thank you for spending a few minutes with us today.
Michael, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. If you want more information on my campaign, you can go to votejoebud.net.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, sir. And another special session coming to Tallahassee to again try to solve the property insurance crisis. You heard Mr. Budd speak about that. We'll talk about it at the